I'm Peter Marks, your co-host of this podcast, Marks and Vincentelli, formerly the chief drama critic of the Washington Post, now free of full-time employment and frankly loving it. I happen to be flying solo on the podcast today. Elizabeth is out west on assignment or skiing or both. In any event, I'm holding on the fort as the spring theater season kicks into high gear as winter still is upon us. And apropos of major things, I have on the podcast not one, but two major Broadway talents, Kelli O'Hara and Brian Darcy James. They are starring together at Studio 54 in a new musical, Days of Wine and Roses, with a score by Adam Guettel, book by Craig Lucas, and direction by the ubiquitous Michael Greif. It was a movie many years ago, as many of you know, and even a teleplay. And it's a tough subject, alcoholism. And as that scourge tears apart a New York family, or as one critic put it, the musical, quote, sets the anguishing consequences of addiction to the rhythms of transgressive escapes and broken hearts. Oh, wait, that was me when I reviewed the show off Broadway in its world premiere at Atlantic Theater Company last year. How fortunate am I, and are we, to have them both here to talk about this wrenching, stunning musical. So let's get right to it. Kelli and Brian, welcome to Marks and Vincentelli, even without Vincentelli. And I am thrilled to have you guys here and to talk about Days of Wine and Roses and your own sort of journeys to this show. I've seen it twice. I saw it both off Broadway and on. I loved it, and I found it even more moving in its at Studio 54. I don't know if it's because I felt that I felt your connection to it, or if it was just hearing the music again. All that oral kind of pleasure that Adam Guettel supplies. But I wondered, one of the things I wondered about was, how do Brian Darcy James and Kelli O'Hara first encounter material like this? Are you brought in at the workshop phase with Michael Greif or something, or are you sent the music to listen to? How do you or do you go watch the movie? I mean, how does it start? Where does the encounter begin, Kelli?
I haven't watched the movie since I was a teenager. I try never to sort of revisit those things once I think I'm going to take it on. We started talking about this show in 2002 when I was doing Light in the Piazza in Sundance with Adam. And
oh my God.
I basically asked him to write it for Brian and me because we had just done Sweet Smell of Success. And I loved the idea of doing something like this with Brian. And I knew Adam's music from the experience of Light in the Piazza and Myths and Hymns and Floyd Collins. I began to fall in love with the music. It's unlike anything that's written ever. I mean, Adam just has as his grandfather said, you have your very own voice. And I knew that it would be spectacular, but it wasn't till 10 or 11 years later that it was 10 years ago, about or so, maybe 11, I was pregnant, when he introduced me to the very first song, which was There Go I. And that song is a tad bit more accessible. And so I remember falling quite fast and quickly in love with it. I think Brian can attest some of the other things that showed up on our desks in our years that went on forward, and we started doing workshops and little pieces and little readings, appeared very much more difficult. And it took me a minute to wrap my head around some of them. Now that we have, it's sort of genius and magical how all of a sudden they become so correct for every single moment we're trying to communicate. But it takes a minute.
Brian, I love the idea that Kelli suggested this for the two of you. What was your kind of visceral response? Was it like, anything to be in an Adam Guettel musical? Yes. To be with Kelli? Yes. I mean, what was the pivot point for you to wanting to do this?
Well, both of those things are true. To work with Kelli again was definitely something I wanted to do. I had worked with Adam on a couple different things. I did Floyd Collins at Playwrights Horizons with him. I did a workshop of myths and hymns. So I had a working history with him, and I knew Adam and share the same feelings about his music as Kelli does. But when Kelli started talking about this as a possible theatrical venture, the idea seemed kind of crazy, but also attractive in the sense that I could see how it might lend itself to a story that could be told theatrically, if only by virtue of the dynamic nature of the characters and how dramatic their trajectories are in that particular story. So there's lots of opportunities there to explore the highs and lows of what they're going through, and then of course with music by Adam and his imagination and how he feels this story, and of course what Craig Lucas brings to it as well in terms of fleshing out these human beings, and that combination. Anyway, it didn't take long for I think I can speak for both of us to say that, this seemed like something other than I've ever experienced as a theatrical piece, and the bones of it seemed really wildly curious to me because I didn't quite understand exactly how the plumbing worked. But as Kelli was just saying, once you kind of get into it and it gets into you, somehow it makes perfect sense.
What do you mean by the plumbing?
Well, I think there's a very interesting concoction of how the story is told. The way that the show is constructed, it kind of takes moments of Joe and Kirsten's lives, and you kind of jump from one lily pad to the next, and almost a vignette. So the in-betweens aren't necessarily as articulated and seen and displayed, as opposed to the landing on of these particular moments of sobriety or being in the throes of addiction or being in a successful marriage or having difficulty, holding up your end of the bargain. So all of those things made for a very unique way of telling the story. That's what I mean by the plumbing.
I see. I was thinking that, you both have to go to some places that are, much darker than and not dark Sweeney Todd dark. This is a much more obviously emotionally realistic piece of theater. But you had to be willing, both of you, I think, to find spaces, those hollows in your own character, your own understanding, to be able to be these two people. There's, it's not. Ultimately, it is a redemptive story. It takes a long time to get to redemption, and to wonder what's going to happen to your daughter, for example, who's played beautifully in this piece. But was there was there soul searching that goes on in having to go through this ritual 8 times a week, or when you were even starting to think about whether you wanted to do this 8 times a week?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, there's projects or acting or singing pieces that are brought to you, and you have to fill in a lot of the holes. And this is one. It's kind of a 2-part situation. The writing is so, although economical, it is so rich and so true, and so written and composed by 2 very inside baseball people, that I sometimes feel like I've likened it to, jumping on that train and being able to ride it pretty successfully because it's there. But then you add to it your own journey with this subject matter, whatever it may be. We as actors live in a lot of different places. Some of them are incredibly personal. Some of them are definitely you're coming from some sort of parallel with something else that adds up to being the same thing. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think the whole room was about soul searching between the director, the 2 writers, Brian and me. We're both parents. We're both Irish. No, I mean, listen, I'm just saying, I feel like it's never just easy black and white. There's
Mm,
layer upon layer upon layer, which makes it so rich and
mm,
satisfying
mm,
to play. But
mm,
I also keep sort of defending the idea of being an actor in this particular process, because I feel like the world sort of needs to think that it is your story or it is your journey in order to really invest. And that's a beautiful compliment, because, you want them to believe in the human being you're playing. But there's also, I keep saying this, but there's also so much play in it for me
mm,
to do this with Brian as two actors, as opposed to Brian and me sinking into some sort of dark, uh,
mm.
you
Got
know,
it.
punishing and
Right.
dangerous place.
Right.
Yes, it's emotionally and physically taxing, but I'm going home to my daughter and my
Right.
son every
Right.
night. I'm the drinks in the glasses on stage are water. So it's
Oh my
I,
God! I didn't realize.
yeah. I mean, I've had people ask me, to be honest. So
Oh,
I,
that's
I, I
great.
love I love both of it. I mean, that's what this
That's not
thing.
a Brandy Alexander. Oh my God. No, that makes a lot of sense. Brian, that makes sense to me. The idea that it's there's an ending every night. There's you go back to your life, and we forget that because this piece you tend to you said. As an audience member, you fall deeply into it. It's one of those things that it really does. It does feel like it's surrounding you. It's not just up in those dimensions on the stage. You feel it all around you because people are reacting very deeply to it around
Yeah.
you. But Brian, for you also, is it that actor's reflex to be able to move into this world and out when you need to outside the theater?
Yeah, for sure. There is, you close the door and you leave work, and you go home. So that is something that's undeniable. But I'd be lying if I, said that it doesn't have its residual effect on my just overall fatigue level, just
Mm,
my emotional kind of filters of seeing the world. I've become better, I think, at delineating the dividing line between my characters and my real life. So that's helpful with age and experience. But I just want to go back to what Kelly was saying and what you were saying, Peter, about how this works on the people that are seeing it. It also works on me, and I
mm,
think Kelly as well. As you're doing it, I think that there's so many things to fall into, as you say. And I think that's the trick, is if you allow yourself to kind of just be taken by what is there on the page and what is there that's being communicated through song with what Adam has written. There are moments in this play that I've never experienced wherein the play is actually it's actually having an effect on me
mm,
in revelatory ways in terms of how I understand Joe, which
mm.
oftentimes are quite moving and surprising to me. And I think that's what you hope for with an experience as an actor on stage, is to allow yourself to be surprised, either by the people that you're working with, or in this case, that happens all the time with Kelly, I might add. But also with the material. The material is so rich and complex, and there's so much that I have to learn about every and any moment of this character's attempt to try to find redemption and try to find a foothold and try to find health and try to find connection and love. All of those things I can relate to in one way or another. Sometimes they just speak to me very profoundly in ways I never imagined. And
Mm.
an example of that is real quick, is near the end of the play when Kirsten comes back, and you think that perhaps that they're going to have a reuniting. And Joe is starting to make amends by acknowledging the fact that he is the one that got her started.
Right.
And it's an obvious statement, but the impact and the realization of the devastation that he has wrought upon her and her family. There was one particular night where I couldn't say the line. I couldn't get it out because
Wow.
I was just so frozen with the shame and the just whatever implications came with the reality of that kind of situation somehow hit me in a way that speaks to how the play was speaking to me.
Mm. It's the reason, what you're both describing is the reason I love this show. One of the reasons I love the show, which I didn't find depressing. I don't find it dragging me someplace I don't want to go. In fact, it sort of lifted me up because I thought, the artistry alone gives you a sense of, the infinite possibilities of what a piece of musical theater can do. You just can't ever put it in a box and not think this is the kind of evening that a musical is. And the other part of it for me was, there is alcoholism in my family. My father was an alcoholic, and there were things I recognized in this piece that really made me feel that Adam and Craig and the screenwriters of the musical understood, very deeply themselves what was going on. But I wondered, between the two of you, I wondered about the idea of, for my father, drinking was a way of not being himself or being somebody else, becoming somebody else, just for those times of forgetting who he was. For Joe and Kirsten, I don't know if that's really what happened here, because Kirsten was clearly she had the gene to become an alcoholic. I mean, it's a disease, we know, but I wondered if what was that symbiosis? Was this drink? Did they drink together out of love? I mean, did Joe want her to drink because it made him more comfortable to be with her? Or was it an act of seduction? I'm trying to figure out, the essence of how you both understood the origins of this descent that they both go into, and they can't get out of. At least she can't. How do you understand that symbiosis between them?
I think we both have very different starting points for that. I mean, we're playing two different people. And remember, we're only playing two people in this whole world of levels of being an alcoholic. We're just playing two people. I mean, I think it does make people who come and view the show look inside and see what they've been. It's cathartic for some. It's validating for some. It's an incredible piercing, uncomfortable piercing to some, and they have to then go sit with themselves a little bit. But it's very important to the writers. I sort of have a two-bit journey with mine, which is Craig's very insistence and honesty, and the truth of it is that yes, she has the gene, she has the disease. It would have happened anyway. But we also learn the story of her parents and her origins and some of the things that she lacked, emotionally lacked. And so for me, it's a combo of all those experiences, and I use all of them really fully. But why they started drinking together, I've been around long enough to know that it feels good to have company in this particular journey. That you're always looking for a good time if you want to have a drink, and it's so much better to have it with other people. Often, you have the two different kinds, but then there are functional alcoholics. I mean, these two people, not necessarily functional. Joe probably was functional for a while. You have to imagine Kirsten was for a while. She certainly carried a pregnancy. She certainly raised a child to a good 8 years old before we see what happens in this story. Again, he's talking about the plumbing, that the things you don't see, the things we've put together.
Right.
But I know that people need reasons for things. I'll have conversations with people they'll talk about, oh, it was the father.
Right.
Or, oh, it was the mother who
Right.
didn't drink very often. Or it can be whatever you need it to be. For me, I have my own ideas about that. But Kirsten, for me, represents some deeply familiar people, and I have my own journeys to her into how this possibly could happen to someone like her. What I do very much feel purposeful about is and adamant about is that, and the word is in the play, that she's not a villain; she's a human being, and this could happen to anybody. And if you're sitting out there and it's not you, thank God.
Brian, did that strike you? How do you, when Kelly's describing that, what does it make you think about?
Well, it's a great question. It makes me think about the starting points, as Kelly says, and I would like to think that above all else, this is a love story. And Joe and Kirsten are fated to meet and fall in love. And it just so happens that they have this disease, which is exacerbated and is propped up and is fueled by their intoxication for each other and also their inclination to want to drink together. So I would like to think that you could tell this story, and it would be a different story, obviously, about these two people falling in love and having a life together in some other dramatic way. That's not the story we're telling. The why. You're right, Kelly. It's people want an answer. They want to know what's the reason. And there's so many ways you could address this. I mean, for example, Joe's backstory, is elucidated a bit with his parents who are in a tragic accident. He loses them while he's in Korea, and he suffers, what we call PTSD now, severely. And so all of this confluence of things, could be factors, but that is actually shot down by Jim Hungerford, the character played by David Jennings, my sponsor in the show, who says, no, it's not because you're running from your feelings. It's because you have this thing inside you. So my point is that it would have happened no matter what. And I think at the beginning of the relationship, Joe is showing Kirsten, as I think most people who are alcoholics, they're not shy to kind of hold that drink up and say, look at this thing that is with me right now. This is very important to me. I love this. This is who I am. And I'm going to show you who I am. And there's no shying away from that. And I think that, take it or leave it. In this case, Kirsten is interested in the person, not so much about the person holding the drinks as much as the person, I'd like to believe. And as they go along, those moments of their own kind of relationship to their own addiction become evident, and then therefore you have this connection of there's attachment now, there's understanding of what each other is dealing with in terms of what alcohol means to them, in addition to what the person means to them as well. So that may be a very clumsy way of saying that it's a love story first and foremost that is fueled by, aided and abetted by alcohol.
You mentioned connection, and I wonder how much consciousness when you're on stage together in this piece, which in some ways, the world really sort of like it becomes kind of a microscope on these two people in this situation. The bubble that they form together really has a kind of almost claustrophobic feel at times. Can you at the same time feel the audience? I know you've both done. I watched you for years on stage, where you're doing much more presentational kinds of performances, where there's more semi-consciousness of an audience being present. Do they disappear for you? Do we out there, are you aware of how they're responding? Can you feel what's coming across to an audience, or do you have to insulate yourself from that in this kind of piece?
I think theater, one of the beautiful and very individual things about theater, which makes me love it more than anything in the world, it's kind of our final chance to share something live, in person. I would be lying if I said that they weren't, in a way, your kind of final collaborator. They're very important in a piece. This piece in particular is very intimate, and I'd like to say that you 100% go inward and don't notice or don't feel, but we can certainly feel their energy. Their energy is always with us, and it's for negative reasons and for positive. If there is no response, but the moment you hear the no,
right.
Or if they laugh at the end of the play when he says a couple of spelling, they've been listening from the minute we started the show. So there's this beautiful collaboration for a live audience. Having said that, this show does feel more I mean, it is so tangled and literally representative of codependency. The world sort of falls apart except for these two. This is all intentional, codependency within alcoholism, within enabling. That's why Al-Anon was created and things like that. It's what is the other person? What I love about it is the responses you get. Someone will see something different in this piece across the board. They're different. Nobody has the same visceral response. And some people say, oh my God, she should never come back. They do not belong together. They are not good for one another, and they're better off this way. Then there are the people that say, please stay for your child. There's a world in which they never come back together, but she is there for her child. She puts her life back together, but they can't do it together. There's a world that it does work out. They come back, they can do this together. They can, but there's a world in which all men ruin women. In the time that we're in, women never get a chance to live a full life. And this is what happens when you try to, mold them into there's that, which that's not my story in this playing. I mean, I love telling the love story. In this business, my chance of telling a love story is a bit finite. And I'm loving every minute I have to still play how damn beautiful it is to fall in love. When I'm 10 years older, that's not going to be afforded to me unless I tell somebody to write something for me, unfortunately. So there are so many elements.
That usually works out, though, for you, Kelli.
Well, when I'm your age, Brian, we'll see.
Whoa.
I'm sorry. Let me turn my hearing aid up. I didn't hear what you said.
No, but there are so many layers to this that just make it enormously human and exciting and impactful for those who like that sort of art. When art is made of is to make sense of confusion, whether it be a love story, alcoholism, but there is this love story at the very core of this. And I think Brian and I believe in it so fully I hope that's what makes the show that much more intriguing and devastating and beautiful in many ways and intoxicating.
Yeah, well, I think that, part of the seduction of this piece is that you're both so appealing that, we automatically, there's something that's chemical about that. Kirsten seems very smart, at the beginning. We see her reading a book, and there's this, intelligent woman who's underemployed, in a time when women couldn't probably get the kind of jobs they deserved. And Joe is just this great evocation of that guy in that period, that sort of madmen period, not madman, who's just trying to get ahead in a very tough world. My father was an ad man, so that's the other part of this that rings true to me. But I think that I don't know that you two have to work at that. I don't think you have to work at that winning quality. You have to, but that seems like an essential part of this. If we don't like you both from the get-go, we're gonna choose sides very quickly, and it's going to, it's not going to feel like a balanced fight, not a fair fight over whose story
I think that's true. I think you have to root for both of them individually, and then more importantly, you have to root for them as a couple and want to see them succeed, because you watch them kind of fall for each other and then have to deal with their addictions, and so therein lies the drama. And you hopefully you're rooting for them for their health, but also for their relationship.
Just a little bit about where you guys are at in terms of this field. How rare, when Kelli, you said off the bat, you started talking about this 20 years ago, basically. This notion of this piece. How hard is it to find things that really engage you at this level? Is it? I've seen you both do things, wonderful things, but how much do you have to sort of sift through before you find this kind of reward?
Peter, I don't know if I ever will again. There is, I have to admit that concerns me, that this is finite. Uh, can we do this for the rest of our life, 18 times a week? I think Brian and I would fall over. But what it asks of you as an artist and as an actor, as a singer, they don't come around all the time. I mean, listen, I've had great joy playing wonderful characters and spreading the joy, as we like to say in my household. And I know that this is different, but for me, and maybe it's selfish, it feels incredibly satisfying to have a character that is really layered, insatiable, um, probably far more intelligent than I am. She's written to be just those things, someone who's just so tightly layered with many, 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 many layers. And to play someone like that so that I could be journeying into these different uh, sorts of thoughts every day, and find new thoughts and feelings. I spent the first half of my career trying to play an essence of an ingenue type thing. And we do that. And it was satisfying in its own way. If the music was there, but I really banged my head against the wall for years and years, wanting to use my voice in a different way, wanting to use my brain and my heart in different ways. And this is actually feeding me on so many levels. And as tiring as it is, it's the most beautiful, and I'll use the word again, intoxicating thing. And I wonder what would possibly be up to that level again. And I'm determined to find it, but of course, and hopeful. But I know where I'm lucky in this particular moment.
Hey, Brian, do you?
Yeah, I think this is a 1 in a million.
Really?
Because of I've done plays where the play and the writing take you to a place that demands a lot from you to kind of invest emotionally and to explore very dramatic things. And certainly I've had moments of that in great musicals as well. But the combination of what these characters are required to do and where they have to go to the depths, where they are learning about themselves and failing, spectacularly and painfully, as just a play in itself would be a remarkable thing. But then you have this incredible score. I have never been more challenged vocally in terms of what I had to have to do as a singer in a Broadway musical than I have with this show. And it's because of just how beautiful and genius Adam Guettel is at writing a score, but also writing for character and to create a world for them that is just as emotionally and technically complex as the book is. And so the combination of what we have to do as singers in a musical theater piece and actors in a devastatingly emotional, dramatic play, combination of those two things I have never experienced before. And it's what you dream of, is being asked to show up basically for the Super Bowl every night and say, this is the end of the season. This is the best of the best. So you get to do it 8 times every week. And that is, as Kelli says, I'm very aware of the weeks as they go by, and the fact that we get to do this at all is just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, I can vouch for the way you two push yourselves to the limit vocally. There's just so much. There are kind of moments when you go, is that technique? Is that emotional force? Is that, self-belief? Is it pure joy of singing? All those things come to mind when I hear you two doing this. It makes me think that, Bernie Telsey should cast you, Brian, in Gilded Age as Kelly's, dipsomaniac cousin who comes to, and infects her. She needs to have her own subplot involving your bad influence. I just feel the two of you together so much. I can, I want to see more of you doing this. But just a couple other questions. Have your kids seen this show? I don't know how old your kids are, but I mean, is this the kind of thing where mommy or daddy is in this really intense piece of theater? How much do you share with the people in your life?
I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. My 14-year-old has seen it twice, and my 10-year-old won't probably see it.
Yeah, I hear you.
But my kids are very supportive. And Brian,
I have a 22-year-old daughter, and she's seen it 3 times, I think.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and she's a music history major, and she just loves music, everything and anything about music, and so she was very curious and very enamored with this show.
I can't imagine what that's like to perform for your kid. That must be, I they're out there, right? The nights they're there. I imagine that's a beautiful moment. It's something, what a sharing that is. And depending on their age, sometimes they're totally embarrassed by their parent, by us. But that must be a remarkable moment after a show like that to see them react to you playing this other person. No?
You asked about the audience. This is an interesting show in that, yes, you're aware, and yes, you feed off energies. But I remember when both my parents and some other family members, but especially my son, came to the show, I worried a little bit about things like the motel room scene.
Oh, I see, right.
And some things. And for some reason, both times, it completely escapes me. At the moment, I don't think about them being in the audience again, because we're deeply on that train.
Right. Interesting.
3/4 of the way through, and I forget. And you might imagine that I would adjust something or something because I don't. But he's also grown up with this, and
right.
my son, he knows, and they've seen me in everything. I've tried to make them completely a part of my career, and but it is interesting how both times I thought about it beforehand, and then the show was over and I realized I hadn't thought about it. So
I think what's really incredible about this particular piece in relation to having my daughter see it is that what's required and what's on display and what we're asked to do and hopefully what we're achieving in terms of revealing ourselves and doing our jobs as artists. There is for me personally, there is I identify so strongly and I carry it's so important to me to be a father and to be that thing for my daughter, and whatever that thing is, sometimes is not in line with what I have to do for my job. And what I have learned, what I take great value in as I get older, is getting the chance to show her that I am dedicated to the idea of being an artist and what I have to do to try to tell the truth, and sometimes that are in ways that aren't easy to watch for anyone, let alone your wife or your daughter.
Right.
But it's important to me to be able to share that with her and to use it as an example of something that I have dedicated my life to, and so I've become more aware of that as a parent, and hopefully understanding the value of what I do as an artist is different than what I do when I'm being dad.
Oh, that's so well said. I have to say, I have a daughter who's 31 now, but I can feel that in both the way you both deal with your daughter in the musical, elements of what you both are describing about your own lives, and how important that is in the musical itself, is protecting her and understanding that, and the fact that you both have daughters, and I commune with that. It's the most it's the most wrenching thing I can think of is hurting her. I think that is so anathema to how I want to live my life, and for you both having to go through that exercise, knowing, obviously, as you say, Brian, putting that, this is your job, this is a different part of you, but using that part of you, using that and understanding it, that deepens. It can't not deepen the work. It makes the work that much richer for us.
Listen, I will fight. I will talk about that forever. How my children becoming a mother just put everything on a completely different level. I couldn't worry things so much as a performer because I had these huge responsibilities in my life, and therefore the work became freer. And they lined up in certain ways. When I was doing The King and I, it was all about a mother and a son,
Right.
and I had a son the same age.
Wow.
Here I am doing this show with a daughter the same age. I had a son and a daughter when I was doing Bridges in Madison County, where the whole story was about, will I leave my son and my daughter for this? It was, I think you can have these, you can use lots of things in your life that are personal to you and beautiful, and it does enrich the work. And it is the greatest gift,
And indeed. And Brian played King George, and he was parent to an entire country. So it's these things. So, of course, he's all our father. Anyway, just last question. And this is just about where you've done this piece twice. You've had the experience of doing it last year at Atlantic Theater Company, and now it's on Broadway. Do you understand these people more at this point in the run, or is that always changing how you perceive Joe and Kirsten, or does it sort of settle and it takes on a life of its own for you?
I think all of those things are true, Peter. I think it's constantly changing. It's constantly settling in. It's constantly informing. Here's an example. Our incredible director, Michael Greif, saw the show the other night, and he made mention to me. He said, "Hey, everything's in great shape." He goes, "The first scene and the first scene where Kirsten and Joe meet on the boat, and another scene where we're going to tell Kirsten's father that we're engaged." He said, you're a little more inebriated. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because in the second scene, I was aware of kind of pulling up the dial a little bit to kind of have a little bit more of a sense of that. But I was not aware of that in the first scene. So I think, to answer your question, I think there are times when the play and the rhythm and everything about who you are, where you start, in this case, is maybe going a little bit too far in terms of where we want to see Joe begin. This is why Michael's such an incredible director, and he has always been this way throughout the process of letting us kind of find our own version of what these people are, and then being very meticulous and scientific about saying, let's find the contour here, not here. And we're talking about shades of difference, which in this play makes a huge difference. So that's just an example of how I think this show, and doing a show 8 times a week over a course of months, has an effect on you, whether you know it or not.
Fascinating.
Yeah, the layers are, you start with this archetype or this, this foundation, whatever it is, that's written beautifully and very layered already. But the great thing about doing it over and over and over again, if you can think of it as more of a joy and a challenge than a factory work, which I never have, is that certain things are true. And then Wednesday afternoon, this whole new layer just appears to you. And it's this great combination of who this person has the potential to be and who she becomes by adding yourself and your own humanity to her, your own story, your own history. Things will appear to me, if you're open enough and loose enough, which this material allows you to be and begs of it, all these things start to pop into your mind. And I sort of have an interesting, meditation sometimes going in certain areas where something will just appear to me that I haven't thought about in years. And that becomes another layer of this human being. So I often think to myself, gosh, what kind of performance was I even giving on opening night when we closed the show? Because I feel like I've learned, 50 more years of this person's existence with these, continual visits to her again.
Sure.
And there's a magic in it. There's a real magic because they've become more deeply realized people with every second we breathe ourselves into them. And they're not us. And that's the beautiful thing. It's this new person
Yeah.
you're finding. And no, that's the magic of it, I think. And I'm hungry for it all the time.
That's so great. I have to say, having seen it twice, the second time I found myself sobbing at the end. I know people out there, sobbing is a good thing in the theater. I think, letting go. But it was in this last time. It was when the daughter reassures the father that things are going to. All right, I can't even talk about it. But that was so powerful this time. I left the place, I needed a towel to wipe my face.
That's a new line, by the way. That was added. That was not at the Atlantic.
You're kidding. Oh, that's fascinating.
This is the genius of Craig Lucas.
Oh my God. Wow, I'm getting chills.
Three words.
I know.
3 words.
I know.
That are seismic in how they make this play ring.
Well, 4 words for the two of you. Thank you so much for doing this. You can tell from my enthusiasm that I think this is a really important show and a wonderful show, and the two of you together is dynamite. So thank you for talking today, and too bad, Elizabeth, that you weren't part of this. This was a keeper. So thank you,
Peter,
guys.
thank you for this. It's nice to be able to have a good amount of time to kind of dissect this and get into it, because it does deserve a conversation. And so I'm very appreciative of it. Thanks very much for that.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Well, as I said, Elizabeth out there in Snowland, you missed a good one. It was great fun to talk to Kelli and Brian. Days of Wine and Roses runs in a limited engagement at Studio 54 until April 28th. It's potently, lyrically, rawly alive. And that's it for me. Elizabeth will be back for the next installment of Marx and Vincentelli, which you can find by going to marxvincentelli.substack.com. If you subscribe, we can keep bringing these rich discussions to you. Until next time.